And we started off the battle for a key swing state as Donald Trump focuses on Wisconsin today. Hello, everybody. Hope you're after a great one so far. I'm Jenna Lee.
And hello, Jenna, again. And hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn in for John Scott. Well, the Republican presidential nominee lost Wisconsin in the primaries, you may remember, to Senator Ted Cruz. Well, he now wants to keep that from happening again against Hillary Clinton. So he's pulling out all the stops in a swing through that key swing state. He's got a fundraiser set for less than 1 hour from now. That'll be held on La Crosse before his town hall later today with our own Sean Hannity. That'll happen in Milwaukee, where that fatal police shooting of an armed man by an African-American police officer has led to those riots there in the recent days. And all this comes on the heels of Mr. Trump's major foreign policy address in Ohio yesterday.
John Roberts, traveling with the Trump campaign, joins us live in La Crosse, Wisconsin with more. John?
And Jenna, good morning to you. He has got a big rally in West Bend, Wisconsin tonight as well. That is about 30 miles north of Milwaukee. Law and order will be a big focus of that. He'll talk about the events in Milwaukee over the past few nights. He'll talk about the root causes of what happened there, both from an economic and a policing standpoint. And, of course, he'll talk more about his plans to combat ISIS and radical Islamic terrorism that he laid out yesterday at Youngstown State University in Ohio. You know, Donald Trump reiterated his plans to restrict visas from countries, or at least the issuance of visas from countries where there is a hotbed of terrorism, as well as a new plan, and that would be to implement an ideological test for people who want to come into this country, either as immigrants or long-term visa holders. And then there's also the issue of enforcement at home. Here's what Trump said earlier.
The support networks for radical Islam in this country will be stripped out and removed one by one, viciously if necessary. Immigration officers will also have their powers restored. Those who are guests in our country that are preaching hate will be asked to return home immediately, and if they don't do it, we will return them home.
Wisconsin is certainly a state that Donald Trump would like to flip. It hasn't voted for a Republican since Ronald Reagan back in 1984. Donald Trump does remain substantially behind in the polls, though. The Real Clear Politics average is about 9.4 points behind Hillary Clinton. Reince Priebus, the chairman of the RNC, is a native Wisconsinite. He, at every turn, tries to help Donald Trump with his message on the road. And Governor Scott Walker had this advice for Donald Trump earlier today on Fox and Friends.
If Donald Trump can keep the focus on her and give speeches like he gave yesterday, where he clearly lays out a very presidential approach as to how he's going to address important issues like the security and safety of our nation, he can win. If he gets off on other issues, it becomes much more difficult. People are ready for a change. Americans want to change. People here in Wisconsin want to change. Hillary Clinton is not a change agent.
That was a subtle suggestion to Donald Trump, Jenna, to avoid taking the bait on every little worm that the Democrats hang in front of him, focus like a laser on Hillary Clinton. Walker says that's the way you win the election, is you take on your opponent one-on-one and not give in to all those other distractions that they throw your way. Jenna?
We'll see if Donald Trump takes the advice. John, I know you'll be watching for that. John Roberts, live in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Of course, the debate over national security is really heating up on the campaign trail after Donald Trump laid out his plan to fight ISIS, a plan that includes tighter restrictions on immigration. Take a listen.
We should only admit into this country those who share our values and respect our people. In the Cold War, we had an ideological screening test. The time is overdue to develop a new screening test for the threats we face today. I call it extreme vetting. I call it extreme vetting.
Joining us now, Shane DiApril, publisher of Campaigns and Elections magazine, which is exactly the topic we're talking about. Shane, it's nice to see you again.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So less than 24 hours since Donald Trump delivered this speech, overall, how would you grade this speech? A success, a failure, neutral? How do you think it's being received?
Well, I certainly think that it was a clear attempt by Donald Trump to be more substantive than he has been on this topic to date. Clearly, that's in response to critics not only on the right, who have urged less bombast and more sort of, restraint and substance when he talks about terrorism and foreign policy, and to critics on the left, the Clinton campaign and pretty much every Democrat on the stump who is hammering this temperament issue and continually questioning whether or not Donald Trump has the temperament to lead on the world stage. So I think by that standard, and by the standard we've judged and have been judging Donald Trump speeches and campaign appearances, he was certainly more substantive yesterday. He was certainly a bit more restrained than he has been.
His attack on Hillary Clinton is her record, pointing to her time as Secretary of State. How effective of an attack is that?
Well, I think, listen, this is what Donald Trump has got to focus on. I mean, you look at the polling, most recent Fox News polling on this question of terrorism from earlier this month showed both candidates sort of locked in a dead heat in terms of, which candidate voters trust more on this issue of terror. So Donald Trump certainly has an opportunity here. I think what he has to overcome quite clearly is this temperament issue, and he's got to sort of, roll back the tendency that he has very often had to sort of go off on tangents, respond to, any criticism that comes his way from the Clinton campaign or Democrats. I think he did that yesterday. I think he certainly did it yesterday more than we've seen him do it. I think if he can continue that and keep on that track and keep hitting Hillary Clinton on her record, keep hitting Hillary Clinton on her issues, and critically actually take his plan to American voters, run some television ads, do some online advertising. He's got the resources. He's got to get his message directly to voters. He hasn't done that.
And so far, he hasn't, as you mentioned. We're looking at where he's spending his money, and there's a big question mark as to where he's investing. You call it a temperament issue. Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden had a different way of describing what they call one of Trump's weakest points. Let's listen to their criticism of the candidate.
There is no doubt Donald Trump is temperamentally unfit and totally unqualified to be President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief.
My son, Bo, served for a year in Iraq, came back a highly decorated soldier. I must tell you, had Donald Trump been president, I would have thrown my body in front of him. No, I really mean it. To keep him from going if the judgment was based on Trump's decision.
We talked about Trump's attacks on his opponent. What do you think of their attacks on him? How effective?
I think politically it's exactly what the Clinton campaign needs to do, because they know that Hillary Clinton alone at the top of the ticket, frankly, is not enough to stir the sort of Democratic base turnout that they need to be really strong in the places that she needs to run up vote totals. This is not Barack Obama at the top of the ticket. Unquestionably, in 2008 and 2012, Barack Obama was tremendously effective at generating enthusiasm among the core Democratic base. Minority voters came out in enormous numbers for President Obama. There's a great concern among Democrats and within the Clinton campaign. I think we've seen that she alone is not enough to generate that enthusiasm. So part of this is relying on the constant Trump critique of here is somebody who's temperamentally unfit, who should not be sitting in the Oval Office, to drive that Democratic turnout, particularly young voters who, as we saw during the primary season, went overwhelmingly against Hillary Clinton.
And so far also haven't come over to Donald Trump. So a big question about those young voters and where they're going to go. Just a final question, Shane. I'm curious about this issue of national security as it plays out for both candidates over the next several months. Arguably, Republican and Democratic administrations have not been successful in rooting out terror. It's still a problem, and it was a problem for both parties. So do either candidate really own this issue, and is this still going to be a central issue as we move on through the campaign?
Oh, I think it certainly will, and I think you're right. Neither candidate does own this issue, and you look at the polling, and polling consistently suggests that neither Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump owns the issue of terror. There's not a significant advantage there for either one of them. So I think, for Donald Trump, it is the biggest question of whether or not he can turn what was a more substantive, policy-oriented speech yesterday into actual messaging on the campaign trail, get this in front of voters, do some paid advertising. and whether Hillary Clinton can, effectively continue this drumbeat of Donald Trump as temperamentally unfit. I think that's how this issue is going to play out from now until the fall.
We'll be watching. Shane, thank you so much for your time today. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And keep it right here on Fox News for an exclusive, an important one. Donald Trump holds a town hall with our very own Sean Hannity in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It airs tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Fox News Channel.
And Jan, there's some new developments to tell you about in the battle to take out the radical Islamic terrorists of ISIS in Syria. For the first time, Russian warplanes have taken off from a base inside Iran to bomb militant groups. That indicates that Tehran and Moscow are increasing cooperation to support their embattled ally, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. So what does this closer Iran-Russia link really mean? Connor Powell reports now live in our Middle East Bureau. Hi, Connor.
Eric, this is further evidence of that growing economic, political, and military relationship between Tehran and Moscow. Now, according to Russia's Ministry of Defense, long-range Russian bombers and fighter jets took off from an airport in western Iran and began to attack ISIS positions in Syria. The statement said the aircraft took out fighters in both Aleppo and Idlib. This is not the first time that Russia has used bases in Iran. As Fox News has reported in the past, they've used bases to refuel and also to move supplies back and forth. But it is believed to be the first time that Russian jets have taken off directly from Iran to launch attacks against ISIS fighters and rebels in Syria. Now, in the past, Russian jets have had to fly these long-range bombers some 2,000 kilometers to attack ISIS and other rebels in Syria from Russia. By doing this now from Iran, it drops the distance down to about 700 or so kilometers, so obviously saving both time and money for the Russian government, and also sort of an ability to launch more attacks more quickly. This comes as Russia and Tehran have really begun to increase their relationship. They've signed agreements. They both obviously back Syrian strongman Bashar al-Assad. But it also comes at a time when both Russia and the United States seem to be at least unofficially working towards an agreement on how to fight ISIS together. While maybe not on specifically the same page, there is some coordination in the last few months about how both countries will attack ISIS. This all obviously is going on as the Assad government is moving against rebels, both ISIS and non-ISIS, in Aleppo and a few other places. So what you're seeing now is this sort of multi-pronged fight, not only against ISIS in Syria, but also against rebels. The Assad government obviously depends heavily on both Iran and on Russia, and that support is just sort of ramping up more and more, as you're seeing with these bases now and the use of these bases in Iran, Eric.
Yeah, certainly will, it seems, help Assad. Connor Powell, thank you so much.
An important story abroad. In the meantime, back here at home, friends and family remembering a 27-year-old woman murdered in broad daylight while jogging. Vanessa Marco's funeral is being held today in Massachusetts as police keep searching for her killer. Also, crews working to get devastating California wildfire under control after it destroys nearly 200 homes, why the fire has now led to an arrest. And we want to hear from you. Big news today. Aetna is pulling out of Obamacare exchanges in 11 states. Are you worried about the health of the U.S. healthcare system? Our live chat is up and running. Just go to foxnews.com/happening now to join the conversation.
Infinity of Cincinnati.
Well, right now, a search is underway for a legendary Nazi train said to be filled with gold. Explorers resumed digging in southwestern Poland today looking for the treasure, despite decades of failed searches. Legend has it that a train carrying gold disappeared in a mountain tunnel as the Germans escaped from the advancing Russian army at the end of World War II. Historians say there's no evidence that the train ever existed, and last year, scientists using magnetic equipment determined that there's actually no train buried where these folks are digging. But the search team insists there's something there. We're going to follow this story. We're going to let you know if they find anything. More on that when we get it.
Yeah, just fascinating. Well, President Obama and Vice Presidential nominee Tim Kaine trying to temper expectations a bit among Democrats who think that Hillary Clinton has this race already sewn up. But they're warning, as Yogi Berra used to say, it ain't over till it's over.
This is going to be a close race, I predict. We're looking good in some polls right now. We're looking good in some polls in North Carolina right now. I mean, I love them. I love them. I love them. But you just got to remember, this has been a season of surprises. Primaries that were supposed to go one way went another way. Polls that said something was going to happen, something else happened. Pundits that made a prediction, they got it wrong.
Let's take a look at a new Washington Post poll from Senator Kane's home state of Virginia that shows Mrs. Clinton up by 14 points in that key battleground state. So if so, why is Senator Kane saying this race will be so close? Jenna Caldwell is a strategist with the DuPage County, Illinois Republican Party. Jessica Ehrlich, former congressional candidate, joins us. Welcome to you both now. Gianna, let me start with you. Is Senator Kane on the level, or is he just trying to gin up the base?
Well, you know what? I talked about this on my social media, my Twitter at Gianna Caldwell this morning. If you look at the news day after day, it appears that the media has already crowned Hillary Clinton as the winner. This is, in my opinion, good for us, Eric. Here's why, and I talk about the Republicans. Because we see, after election, when candidates and parties get very comfortable, as they have, the Democrats, you see them time and time again, already putting an RIP sign on Donald Trump, they don't show up to vote. And in this election, especially, Democrats have a visceral hate in some cases for Hillary Clinton, as well as Republicans. In addition to that, people don't trust her. So I say that Republicans will come out in force in spite of whatever the media says in favor of Donald Trump. And if people believe that Hillary Clinton has already won it, her folks won't show up to vote.
Jessica, do you think Jenna has a point? I mean, look, Priorities USA, that big super PAC that supports Hillary, they've already put out their ads from Virginia, from Colorado, from Pennsylvania. Is there a possibility that the Democrats could become just too overconfident?
I don't think so. I think that's why you've seen not only Senator Kane, but also President Obama remind everyone time and again to make sure that there's going to be a huge ground effort. Because most of these states, while yes, there's some states like Virginia where the lead has increased now into double digits, we're still in that margin of error, and it's between 4 and 5 points with Hillary Clinton leading. So it's definitely going to be a major ground effort. We've got 3 months to go. As we've seen time and again in the last, 2 years, anything can happen in this presidential election. It's really been remarkable. However, I think it's more really that the Republicans are sort of putting the RIP sign on Trump in many ways and trying to focus. Well, they've been saying it themselves and having emergency meetings and trying to focus more on some down ticket races because they really see that as one of the main challenges.
Yeah, but let's take a look at some of the. All right, John, let me show you a couple of polls. This is from Florida and Ohio. I mean, is it really that far apart? Look at that. This is Florida. Mrs. Clinton is up by 5 points. That's not, 15 points. And in Ohio, she's up by just 4 points. That's not a lot. Gianna, you think Trump can make up the difference?
So this is the thing that poll probably isn't showing, is the fact that there's another candidate in this race by the name of Jill Stein, which takes away from Hillary. So when you add in Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, it pretty much put them statistically tied. Now, this is in spite of some of the mistakes and mishaps that Donald Trump has made, which tells you people just want a reason to vote for Donald Trump, and we have to continue to give them to him, and he has to stay on message, stay on track. So this will be a very, very close election, but I disagree with what Jessica said in the point that Democrats, I'm talking Democratic voters, are becoming very overconfident, and they're believing that Hillary Clinton is going to win because they think that Donald Trump is going to be this easy guy to beat, which we saw with 16 other Republican candidates. That certainly wasn't the case.
Well, look at the Boston Globe today, and they think that Donald Trump is the easy guy to beat. Is the presidential election essentially over? This is what they're asking. They say with 84 days to go, the 2016 presidential election might essentially be over, barring something totally unforeseen. Every day that goes by without Trump shaking up his campaign is one day closer to Clinton becoming next president. It's like when the New England Patriots have the ball with a 17-point lead midway through the third quarter. It's possible the other team could come back, but it's probably time to turn off the game and rake the leaves. Jessica, is that fair? I mean, or just so premature?
Well, I think it's slightly premature, but we've seen this time and again where all the pundits, whether Republican or Democrat, have been saying lately, the numbers are such that you have got to win certain swaths that Mitt Romney did not win. And Trump is suffering so much with non-white voters right now that numbers-wise, as we've seen over and over in even the primary election, this election comes down to sheer numbers and the electoral college and which are the states that he's going to be able to win. Florida is historically now, the past 3 election cycles for the presidential race, a very slim margin even for President Obama. It's just one of those states. Ohio, we know very similarly, it's one of those states that has to be won. But there are a lot of other states that have sort of quote-unquote been in play that we've been monitoring the last few weeks. They keep tightening in favor of Hillary Clinton. I mean, with Latino and African American voters, Trump's numbers are so low that it's going to take a huge effort for him to win.
What would you say to Jessica finally? What would you say to the Boston Globe? They say that Hillary already has sewn up 288 electoral votes, enough to, win.
We have a whole lot more ground to cover. We got about 3 months, and we got a lot of debates in which Donald Trump is going to show why he should be the president, as he did yesterday with his foreign policy speech. In addition to that, to Jessica's point, in terms of making up the ground when it comes to minorities, the RNC just hired some folks, Ashley Bell being one of them, to handle or oversee the African-American outreach. They've hired some Hispanic staffers as well. So I think we're putting the infrastructure in place to get some of those voters. Of course, with any Republican, there's not a huge amount of minority voters that you generally get, but I think we have some ability to make up some ground, especially considering the fact that Hillary Clinton has a history with African Americans that haven't been positive. And when I say that, I'm talking about the '94 crime bill. I'm talking about calling African Americans super predators, and her saying things when it's politically expedient, when she believes she can get away with it. So long as we continue to bring up those things, I think we can build a stronger case in terms of getting black support.
All right, well, as the Boston Globe perhaps would say there, you're on the 30-yard line now. You got 70 yards to go.
Is it too little, too late?
And we'll see. Well, they can always punt. Statue of Liberty play. Giano and Jessica.
Thank you for having me.
Somehow, I don't think punting is going to be in the game. But that was a nice football reference, Eric.
When you kick it all the way out and right through the goal line,
Yeah, I do know. Thank you.
You know about this.
I do. And thank goodness we're almost to football season, right? Upstate New York. A good warning for us, Maria. Thank you.
Jenna, there's fallout today after a major transfer from the U.S. detention center at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, with 15 detainees just released to the United Arab Emirates. The Pentagon calling it the largest detainee release under President Obama so far, and that just leaves 61 detainees remaining there as the deadline looms for the president to keep his promise to close Gitmo down. So should this new group have been freed? Naveed Jamali joins us, Reserve Intelligence Officer with the Office of Naval Intelligence and your Senior Fellow at the Program on National Security at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. Naveed, good to see you.
Time of standing tall.
Well, our numbers coming your way in about 6 minutes. What do you guys got cooking, Sandra and Harris?
A lot. Yeah, a lot. Donald Trump unveiling his strategy for the war on terror with extreme vetting of immigrants and a temporary ban on immigration from some places. Is his stance too tough for some voters who are on the fence, or what folks want to hear?
Plus, Trump says he'll keep Guantanamo Bay open as the Obama administration announces its big transfer of detainees, the biggest yet. So whose approach will keep us safer?
And perjury allegations against Hillary Clinton, along with more evidence suggesting a pay-to-play scheme in her State Department.
All fair game for our hashtag one lucky guy. Congressman Peter King of New York is going to be outnumbered atop the hour. Pop your corn, your day is made, my friend.
He is a lucky guy.
Oh,
Peter King.
That's so sweet.
All right, see you in a bit. Well, Donald Trump has come under fire for his controversial and unsupported warning that the presidential election could be, in his words, rigged. But, with an increase in online voting across the country, some experts say an election could actually be hacked.
Voting can be as easy as a click of the mouse, but is it secure? 26 states and the District of Columbia now allow some form of online voting, from casting your vote online to sending an email. But after high-profile hacks like those of the Democratic National Committee, the Obama administration is looking at ways to protect online voting.
There's a vital national interest in our election process. So I do think we need to consider whether it should be considered by my department and others critical infrastructure.
Once you have something on the internet, you're telling the world, please come hack me.
MIT professor Ron Rivest, an internet voting expert, says despite the promise, online voting is not yet foolproof.
There's lots of wonderful ways the internet can contribute to elections, but putting voting itself online, to me, is a step too far. That's over the line. We don't know how to do it securely. You're inviting trouble. Every country overseas that has an axe to grind with the U.S. can try to get in and manipulate the election.
Well, last month, Illinois happened to shut down its voter registration voter base after it may have been hacked. Officials reportedly blaming a, quote, highly sophisticated attack, most likely from a foreign entity. And New York U.S. Election Assistance Commission, which is the federal agency that deals with voting, they say, quote, "We are not yet at the..."
Viewed as in a positive light. We're down, at this point, we're down to 60. 17 of those people have been designated as high-value targets. They're not going anywhere. So we're really talking about, down to 30 or 40 people left that are been in there for 14 years. Could we potentially gain a little bit of political ground by putting them somewhere else? Probably, yeah, I think so.
But then
Should they be going back?
What if they, as their fellow former detainees, then resort to wanting to go kill Americans? I mean, Americans have died. Paul Lewis, who was the liaison to Gitmo, let me tell you what he said to a congressional committee. He said, "What I can tell you, unfortunately, there have been Americans that have died because of Guantanamo detainees. When anybody dies, it's a tragedy. We don't want anybody to die because we transfer detainees. However, it's the best judgment and the considered judgment of this administration and the previous administration that we should close the facility." So what they're doing is keeping it open, emptying it. Maybe they'll send some to Supermax, but the rest of them are going back and in some cases resorting to killing us.
Look, I totally agree with you. I don't think these are people that we should just open the door and just say, "Hey, you've had a nice run here. You're rehabilitated. Hocus pocus. Go out there and do your thing." But on the other hand,
I mean, they get screened, and the panel says, "Great, go on." I mean, remember the Taliban 5? There's been testimony that they are trying to resort back to threatening actions, whatever that means. I mean, does that really work?
Look, I think it's and listen, this is the problem between with intelligence. Look, we're a nation of laws. At a certain point, they have habeas corpus. That's just the Supreme Court, letter of the law. At a certain point, they have a right to request, why am I being kept here, and bring it and have the government present the case for detention. We're kind of with our back up against the walls. I don't know that there is a good solution here. No, I don't think that Guantanamo Bay should just be shut for political expediency. On the other hand, SCOTUS weighed in on this. How can we keep these people legally? And then secondly, perhaps if we can't, then an intermediary where they're actually put somewhere where they can be watched, and I'm not suggesting that they're opened up to society, but they can be watched, whether it's a quote-unquote rehabilitation center, which essentially means, we would hope, a very closely watched halfway house. That may be a better way to do this. And look, the other question is, what's going to happen with ISIS? Are we going to start taking people off the battlefield from Syria and Iraq and bring them here? That's still an open-ended question. Where are they going to go?
That's a big one. Yeah, Naveed Jamali, thank you. For your insight. Certainly, it seems that as we empty Gitmo, some will be coming here to the United States, and we will watch them. Thank you, Jenna.
Well, Team USA bringing home the gold from Rio this month. But did you know, before Michael Phelps, there was an American who brought home 24 gold medals and never, ever competed in an Olympic sport? How did that happen? You'll recognize the name, and we'll tell you who it is after the break.
Catherine Herridge confirming that Donald Trump will receive his first classified intelligence briefing tomorrow.
We're told that briefing for the Republican presidential nominee will likely take place at an FBI office in New York City. We're covering all the news happening now. Deadly storms dumping torrential rain on Louisiana, and the devastating floods could get worse with even more rain in the forecast. Plus, the end of an era as a Las Vegas icon comes crashing down. What's replacing this famous casino? And a dramatic crash caught on video. How the couple in this car survived. It's all happening now. But we begin with the GOP-led House Oversight Committee pursuing perjury charges against Hillary Clinton. Welcome to the second hour of Happening Now, everybody. I'm Jenna Lee.
And hello, Jenna, again. Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn in for John Scott. House Republicans sending a letter to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia. In it, they detail what they insist are conflicts that are criminal between Mrs. Clinton's 2015 sworn congressional testimony about those emails and what the FBI actually found during its investigation that they'd say contradicts what Mrs. Clinton claimed.
Let's flesh all of this out. Our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, is live in Washington, D.C. with more. Catherine?
Well, thanks, Jenna. The Republicans also released a video contrasting Clinton's 2015 testimony with the FBI director's news conference in July, where he recommended against criminal charges. On the destruction of 30,000 emails, including government records, there are clear discrepancies. In this brief letter, the Justice Department confirms that it has the perjury referral, but it makes no commitment to act on the allegations, nor is there a time frame provided. A veteran FBI official said an FBI analysis comparing what Clinton told Congress and what she told FBI investigators should take weeks, not months.
It seems to be, since the record is already established of what she said, and the investigation is complete as in terms of what she said subsequent to that congressional testimony, that it would be a relatively simple matter to make a decision about perjury.
The Clinton campaign has said that Director Comey's congressional testimony last month cleared up any of these discrepancies, but the Republicans disagree on this point, Jenna.
Something we're going to watch. Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Jen, as Catherine mentioned, the Republican-led House Oversight Committee putting together that video on the web highlighting these apparent discrepancies. Let's take a look at a little more of that video. Possible criminal case. Sarah Westward is a watchdog reporter for the Washington Examiner, and we're also joined by Dan Henninger, deputy editorial page editor for the Wall Street Journal. Welcome to you both. Dan, let me start with you. Can Mrs. Clinton be charged with perjury to what she said under oath? I mean, some of it was flat out wrong, but does that make it criminal?
Yeah, that's the big question, Eric. I mean, certainly she can be, but the question is, will she be? And I very much doubt it. I mean, it seems clear to me that those statements that she made to the committee were not true. But perjury is a legal charge, and the question is, are those convictable false statements that she made to Congress? And that's a judgment call that the prosecutors would have to make. And since Mrs. Clinton, at the moment, is the nominee for one of the two major parties for the presidency, I think they would have to be absolutely certain that they were going to be able to convict her, not merely charge her.
Sarah, what do you think? Do you see this case going anywhere, or do you think it'll stay in the political realm?
Well, the reason why the FBI declined to push criminal charges against Hillary Clinton for mishandling classified information was because they didn't find any criminal intent behind her actions. And that could be the same excuse for why the perjury case doesn't move forward. They might find that Hillary Clinton's statements don't match the evidence that was uncovered by the FBI, but they might also find no evidence that she knowingly made false statements to the committee. And because there will be that lack of criminal intent, you might see this case just fail to move forward.
Well, then how can you show or potentially prove she knowingly or unknowingly did that? I mean, Dan, you got at least 3 of those little C's that the former president, Bill Clinton, calls this old bull. But there were classified material, 113 other classified type emails. You've got the discrepancies between one device when there were really more, that she said they turned over all the material to the State Department. That wasn't true at all either.
No, it wasn't true. And, you know, I think as a political matter, Eric, this email thing, I believe, is Hillary Clinton's biggest political vulnerability.
Why is that?
Because it started in March of last year when she gave her first press conference to try to explain what was going on with that server. And commentators from left to right said what that she said that day was not credible. Hillary Clinton, from day one of the server story, has been telling half-truths. And her numbers on trustworthiness and credibility have headed straight down over the past year. She's under 30% now. And I think most Americans do not believe most of the things that Hillary Clinton says now. And if Donald Trump were to raise this issue over and over again in detail, that this is the point where she's, in effect, her political Achilles heel. No one believes her on this story.
So basically, Sarah, Dan's saying that the untrustworthiness poll numbers of her that are so high kind of started a long time ago, but certainly have been exacerbated by this and will continue. Because, look, they're going to release also a summary of the evidence that could potentially lay out the whole case dealing with her and have more information that we don't even know about.
Exactly, and beyond the fact that we're still waiting to see notes from the FBI about the investigation, beyond the fact that there's lingering questions about potential perjury, Hillary Clinton herself keeps this story in the headlines because every time she faces a question about it in an interview or at a campaign event, her answers call into question her honesty. You know, she said earlier this month that she short-circuited an answer about the emails. She earned 4 Pinocchios from fact-checkers when she told Chris Wallace that Director Comey's testimony exonerated her. And so she herself and her unwillingness to address this head-on and to admit that this was a mistake and to admit that she was careless with classified information, that too is making loose ends in the email controversy, even though she would like to dismiss it as a done deal.
Yeah, and it's not going to be going away anytime soon, Dan, because the State Department apparently is going to review 110 classified emails redacted a lot. What happens if you get these emails come out and you got all black, 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 showing that there was all this classified material in it?
Yeah, and I think much of the public will conclude that there was classified material in it. She has denied that, and it raises an issue in people's minds about her own fitness to be president. I mean, you've got over half of the country saying they just do not want to vote for Hillary Clinton for president. And I'm convinced, Eric, that this is one of the primary reasons that her inability to give a straight answer about anything related to the emails has raised this doubt in people's minds about whether they want to put her in the Oval Office.
All right, Dan and Sarah, perhaps in a few weeks, if we do see, an email that says, "Dear Madam Secretary," the whole thing is blacked out completely, the Trump people could use that in a campaign commercial. Thank you so much for your insight. Jenna?
Well, now to that hot-button issue of illegal immigration and the role it will play in the presidential election. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton with very different plans and both coming under fire. William Lajeunesse is live in Los Angeles with this story. William?
Well, Jenna, Clinton and Trump disagree on almost everything, but on immigration and border security, they're in different planets. Trump, of course, wants a wall. Hillary doesn't. She defends sanctuary cities. He would cut off their federal aid. He would deport America's 11 million illegal immigrants. She would offer them citizenship.
We have the most secure border we've ever had.
Those who patrol it disagree.
People are just coming over, turning themselves in, and we're lucky to catch 40% of those who aren't turning themselves in.
In her first 100 days, Hillary Clinton promises to legalize the illegal immigrants already here.
Let's move to comprehensive immigration reform with a path to citizenship.
To Trump, that's amnesty.
We should not let anyone into this country who doesn't support our communities.
Trump would require employers hire Americans first, new immigrants need to prove they won't need welfare, and require employers to verify immigration status before hiring any worker.
He very much views immigration from a cynical zero-sum kind of attitude, and I think Hillary Clinton recognizes that immigration and immigrants have for a long time and continue to be a very strong net positive for this country.
Clinton promises to stop deportations and close immigrant detention centers.
I would not deport children. I do not want to deport family members either.
Agents call that an open border.
We're allowing too many people to come in unchecked, unvetted, and just giving them free roam around our country.
So Clinton says she will use executive authority to offer legalization and work permits if Congress refuses to act. In fact, Jenna, it has and rejected comprehensive immigration reform 5 times in the last 10 years. Back to you.
An important topic, William. Thank you very much. And don't miss this Fox News exclusive tonight. Donald Trump holds a town hall with Sean Hannity in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time right here on the Fox News channel.
More severe flooding in Louisiana tonight. So far, 8 people have been confirmed dead in these devastating floods, and authorities say streams and rivers in the Gulf are ready to overflow. More than 8,000 people have been relocated and now living in shelters. Thousands more had to be rescued. We've seen those dramatic rescues from those floodwaters. We have live Team Fox coverage. Senior meteorologist Janice Dean standing by in the Extreme Weather Center. But let's begin with Casey Stiegel, who's at the center of some of this devastation in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Hi, Casey.
Eric, good to see you. This damage is so widespread. When you get in a car and you start driving around, it doesn't take you long at all to run into neighborhoods just like this one. Look at that. The water about halfway up to the stop sign there. This is in East Baton Rouge Parish. The governor of this state not long ago, John Bel Edwards, now says that at least 40,000 homes across Louisiana have been impacted in some form or fashion by those torrential rains that fell days ago. More than 20 inches in some places. A federal disaster declaration has been requested in 29 parishes. Sadly, first responders discovered yet another body in the floodwaters near Baton Rouge today, bringing the death toll now here to 8. Some 20,000 people have been rescued since Friday. Some residents coming back and returning to nothing.
I'm heartbroken. It's my home. This is where I grew up. I've never seen this. There's no words to describe what's going on.
The U.S. Coast Guard says just last night, a family of 3 was trapped in their car surrounded by fast-rising water in Livingston Parish. They were safely rescued, including a 5-day-old infant. The sun is shining at the moment, but as we know, all eyes on the sky for tonight and the remaining part of the week with the possibility of even more rain, something the residents here just do not need because the ground is already saturated. Even though the sun is out starting to dry some things out, the ground is still very saturated and all of the lakes, rivers, and streams just about at capacity, if not spilling over. Eric.
Casey, that's just incomprehensible. Thank you. Now to senior meteorologist Janice Dean. She's got conditions on the Gulf Coast coming up and also keeping an eye on that heat wave that's hitting parts of the country and the wildfires out west. What a different contrast around the country today, Janice.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, heart and prayers out to the Gulf Coast, where we're still seeing the potential for heavy rain across Texas and Louisiana up towards the Tennessee and Ohio River valleys. We have a stalled frontal boundary and all of that tropical moisture being ushered northward. Flood advisories in place for a good chunk of southern Texas into Louisiana, where we have the potential for flash flooding and the rivers continue to rise. So the forecast precipitation, several more inches in the forecast here. Not good news for a dire situation. It's typically what you would see out of a tropical storm or even a hurricane. We're going to be monitoring that. Future radar for the northeast. Very warm, sticky air here. Cold front moving through, the potential of large hail, damaging winds, and even isolated tornadoes for millions of folks here in the northeast, including parts of Jersey as well as Pennsylvania and New York. Our heat advisories are in place. Warm, sticky air ahead of this where it feels well over 100 degrees. There's your forecast heat index. The heat is going to break as we head into the weekend, but we really have to get through the next couple of days, and we will touch upon the wildfires that continue to burn across the west. Over 24 large wildfires, and the forecast rainfall not looking good, especially for California. A little bit of monsoonal moisture getting into the Four Corners up towards the northern plains here, but not enough to really get things going, relief for firefighters. So it's really a situation of too much of a good thing in terms of rainfall and not enough for the west. A lot of stories we're working on. Back to you, Eric.
Yeah, a lot of people need to be in our thoughts and prayers today. Thank you.
Of course.
Jenny?
Moving back to politics now, the Fox News alert on a new poll just released that shows Hillary Clinton opening up a significant lead over Donald Trump in the key battleground state of Florida. According to the Monmouth University poll, the Democratic nominee leads Trump by 9 points in Florida, 48 to 39%. The poll includes the Libertarian Party nominee, Gary Johnson, with 6%, and Green Party candidate Jill Stein with 1%. 5% of voters remain undecided. So that's the new polling. You're also looking live at a scene in another battleground state, Hillary Clinton Day 2 in Pennsylvania, attending a Democratic Party voter registration event at a high school there. Just talking a little bit about the Olympics and how she's happy to be in Pennsylvania. We're going to dip in and listen for just a moment here to Hillary Clinton.
To compete, and that's what we're going to do in America. There is nothing we can't do if we put our minds to it. I was up in Scranton yesterday with Vice President Joe Biden, and we had a great day. Both Joe and I have roots in Scranton, so we saw a lot of people that we're related to, and a lot of people who tell us we're related to them. But it just reminded me of how lucky we are to be part of a country that has provided so much opportunity. It's not perfect, we know that, but there is no place that has provided more opportunity. To my grandfather, who came here as a young immigrant, worked in a factory, created a great life for his family, and then my dad, who was a small businessman in Chicago, worked hard. And I want that story to be true for every American family. And that is the principal motivation that I have.
Hillary Clinton speaking in Pennsylvania on the campaign trail yet again on a very important battleground state. If you'd like to watch her comments live, you can do so at foxnews.com. One of the big questions for the Democrats is how they're going to handle the issue of health care. We have news today of another big insurer dropping out of the health care exchanges set up in several states. We're going to have more on that news of the day after a quick break.
Well, there's new information on a major blow to the Obamacare program after one of the nation's biggest health insurance companies says it will stop offering the government-subsidized plans in some states. Starting next year, Aetna will drop coverage in 11 of the 15 states where it sells individual insurance on the government-run online marketplaces. The reason the company says is that its policies are just costing much more money than expected, and they're just losing too much money. So what does this mean for the future of Obamacare? Let's bring Leslie Marshall, radio host and Fox News contributor, and Lars Larson, a syndicated radio host for Alpha Media Networks. Welcome to you both. Lars, let me start with you. When it comes to Aetna, at least, and it's on and on and on, it was United Healthcare recently. Why is Obamacare going down the tubes?
It's fatally flawed. Eric, it's a dead plan walking because baked into Obamacare is the requirement that everyone is supposed to carry coverage. The problem is, for the practical solution, for an awful lot of especially younger people with smaller salaries, they look at the choice of paying $4,000 or $5,000 per year in premiums for a plan that delivers almost nothing because of high copays and high deductibles, or paying a $1,000 fine to the IRS. The choice is easy. It's a very big, tough decision to make. So what happens is an awful lot of people, again, especially younger people who are healthy, just say, I'm not going to pay. That leaves the only people signing up reliably people with chronic ongoing illnesses, even if they're younger. And what they get is they get a plan only because they absolutely need it. The rest of them don't do it. Well, that means losses. And it's the same pattern in Aetna that you've seen in United Healthcare, as you pointed out. This is baked into the plan. There's no way to fix this other than a massive bailout by the government, which is exactly what Hillary Clinton planned.
Leslie, think that's going to happen? I mean, look, Aetna says in the second quarter they lost $200 million, and United Healthcare went down from like 34 states to 3. I mean, they're massively cutting this out, Leslie.
Well, first of all, when we look at Aetna, I think it's a little bit suspicious that the Department of Justice said no to their merger with Humana. This could be in retaliation. And also, we are seeing what insurance companies have shown us for years, which is why we need health care reform, is that insurance companies don't care about patients, they care about profits. Now, having said that, they are a company and they need to make profits. But the reality is we have over 10 million people on Obamacare. If you are born with a pre-existing condition, Aetna and no one else can turn you away. And here in California, Blue Cross and other companies have over 100 plans. So I don't think that this is going to be the end of Obamacare. It definitely might be the end of Aetna having some people that want lower priced plans for themselves.
Will that push people to the government and more to Medicaid? Leslie.
Well, actually, yes, for a temporary amount of time. But that's part of the reason that we've had the exchanges and why we're going to see, I believe, going forward, more expansion on those exchanges, especially if Hillary Clinton is elected in November.
But, you know, but Lars, let me pick one point. The CEO of Obamacare, you know, he's basically is blaming Aetna in his statement about this, talking about the companies needing to be competitive. And he does point out that, you know, he says 11 million Americans are covered.
Eric, here's the problem. When you tell a company you have to be competitive, but then you say, we're going to force all these people to join, and the people say, no, you're not. We're just going to pay the fine. Is Leslie seriously suggesting that when Aetna got angry over the lack of a merger, they said, I know, we'll get even by conspiring to lose $200 or $300 million? Boy, what a get back on the government they got, right, by going out and deliberately losing $350 million. This is baked in. And if you've got these numbers, this is a numbers game, Eric. You talk to the actuarial folks and say, if all you cover is primarily sick people and the healthy people don't pay premiums, without healthy people, the thing they call in the insurance business the law of large numbers doesn't work.
That's one of the issues, and we're out of time. Leslie and Lars, thank you. We'll see how this goes and see if Aetna changes its mind, although the administration says that it is covering people. Thank you.
A Fox News alert, high-level discussions in the wake of Russian airstrikes on ISIS. We've gotten word that Secretary of State John Kerry and the Russian foreign minister have been discussing the unfolding situation by phone. Russia says its warplanes took off from a base in Iran to target ISIS in Syria. That's a first. Russia has never launched Syrian operations from a Middle Eastern nation other than Syria, but it's also extremely rare that Iran would allow anyone to use their air bases. In the meantime, more tensions between Russia and Ukraine over Crimea. Overnight, new ceasefire violations in the eastern part of Ukraine, even as Ukraine moves some of its air defense missiles closer to Crimea. So both areas ramping up. Benjamin Hall is live in Kiev with more. Benjamin?
Hi, Jenna. Jenna, the Ukrainian war has been largely forgotten by much of the world, but it has been going on here for the last 2 years. Over 9,000 people have died, and now it's back in the headlines, and it looks to be escalating. We've seen cross-border raids, we've seen violations of the ceasefire, and now the big question that everyone is asking, is Putin going to invade? Many seem to think so. Just over the last week, Russia has been holding live-fire military exercises in both the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. Putin has in the past used these exercises as a smokescreen for an attack, and some analysts think that he may, in a matter of moments, do the same. So far, amid the bitter fighting, Russia has moved thousands of its tanks, its personnel, to the borders, meaning that Russia now has roughly the same number of tanks in the area as NATO has in Europe. Now, the US has reached out. Joe Biden has contacted both the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, and also the President of Ukraine, Poroshenko, urging them to calm down and keep things civil. But at the moment, more people are saying that the US has to do more. Yesterday, American tanks and soldiers did join an annual parade in Poland in a symbolic show of US military involvement, and there will be a continued US build-up in the region, which next year will include 4,500 additional soldiers. But still, people are asking what Putin is playing at here, just at a time when the US is reaching out to Russia and relationships were getting better and closer. He now makes this move. So very interesting to see what he's going to do next. And of course, only Putin knows what he's going to do. Jenna?
All the more reason to watch, and good to have you there in Kiev. Benjamin Hall, thank you.